So again, nitpicking because they obviously had a lot of success. Um, and we're talking from the vantage point of why didn't they win a national title for the first time since 1988?
Right.
Because they had a lot of success. So keeping that in mind, I think that Notre Dame could recruit the quarterback position better compared to the way they've recruited other rooms. You know, they haven't. Every other room they've had guys that have heard their names called early in the draft, guys that were all American caliber players, guys that were difference makers. But at quarterback, it's been tough sledding. They haven't really been in the mix for a guy. Deshaun Kaiser was a good recruiting win, and so was Brandon Wimbush. Um, but you look at the roster now, even um, Tyler Buckner was a guy that they committed to early and committed. Who knows what his process would have been? But when Notre Dame committed him, he hadn't even played a varsity. He had played just one varsity game and got hurt, or I'm misremembering it. And so Notre Dame, you know, the Pine kid, Brandon or the Brendan, he's at Old Dominion now.
They transferred. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brendan Clark.
Like this is Notre Dame, man. I mean,
Yeah.
like these are, like we should, if you're Notre Dame, it's like we should be getting the guys, like we should be, not saying every year, but we should beat Clemson and Alabama for a quarterback one year, or
Yeah.
like this is, we're playing in important games over here too. So I think that, I mean, you look at that team that won 10 games the year after 4-8. That
Right.
offense was loaded.
Yeah.
I mean, that team was built to, I know they were coming off 4-8. That offense had, so many pros on it. The McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson and Bars I know I'm forgetting some guys with the wideout room. You had St. Brown, Boykin, um,
Stacked.
and Claypool was in there. The tight end room's always loaded. Running back room, you had Dexter and you had Theo, or no, you didn't have Theo. Theo was on the first title game, but you had Dexter and you had Josh Adams, who played meaningful downs in the NFL.
And young Tony Jones. Yeah.
So I mean, like they had enough talent, but you look at, it was a brand new offensive coordinator that never been a play caller before, that's learning on the job at a place like Notre Dame, and you're telling me an offense that loaded can't score more points against Georgia in that home game loss at night? I mean, that was just having a young coach out there that just didn't get, didn't scheme it up right, in my opinion, based on what he had in his deck.
Right.
Because that deck was stacked, and I think, was Wimbush the starter in that game or
Yeah, Wimbush was the starter in that game.
Yeah.
They had the lead in the fourth quarter. Georgia took the lead, and then
they had the lead in the fourth quarter, but that, they weren't scoring points.
Right.
It was in the teens.
Yeah.
Big Fromm starting his first game for Georgia, if I remember correctly. So
he was.
I mean, so Notre Dame, I love their approach at quarterback recruiting this cycle because, here's Coach Reese, who did not quarterback recruiting, in my opinion. You look at the last cycle and they signed Angeli, and that was a guy that they offered early. But I think that Drew Aller's like the guy that you would want, right? And they offered him late. And I think that they had him on the radar, though, and they just didn't go for whatever the reason. I think that Coach Reese is a self-aware man. They got like 6 or 7 offers out to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily recruiting them all anymore, but it's like, hey, you got some promise. We're offering, we're in the game early. And then eventually we make some tough decisions down the road. And this is who we're zeroed in on now. It's because we're Notre Dame. We can do that.
Yeah.
It's and so I think the way Notre Dame's recruiting the quarterback position this cycle is as good as I've seen them recruit it in a long time. And I think it's because of the approach and the balls to say, like Notre Dame offering Ty Simpson late last year. Not saying they would have got him. He went to Alabama, but it's like, Ty Simpson, everybody knew he was good for a long time, so I think this time around, Notre Dame's in the game on everybody good early, and they have a big leg to stand on with what they've done, with what that program can do for NIL. And now they're in the mix. They're square. Notre Dame is squarely near the top of the list for two of the elite guys in the country, Dante Moore and Christopher Vizina. And they were for Jackson Arnold, who's committed to Oklahoma. Now, you're not going to get them all, but that's what I just said there is way better than anything that happened in the cycle prior. And that's because I think that Notre Dame has adjusted their approach. And so they didn't get Jackson Arnold, but they were way in it. I think they have a great shot to get Dante Moore. And with that, I don't, Vizina, Vizina probably goes elsewhere, but they're like right there with him if they're not in a great spot for Dante Moore, in my opinion. And that's awesome. And they already have the number one class in the country on 24/7 Sports without a quarterback in the fold yet. So that's incredible as well.